Okay, welcome to How to Twitter Space, your guide to hosting spaces that educate. This will be about a 10 to 15 minute presentation, maybe even a little quicker, but we'll see how that goes. Quick introduction. Who are we and who am I? I am Dr. Doscoin. I'm the little avatar you can see in the right bottom hand corner. And I'm one of the partners at Orbital Command, whose logo you can see in the bottom left corner. We are a validator on the Lunar chain, on the Lunar Classic chain, on Osmosis, and I believe we're going to be on Say Network soon too. So just keep your eyes and ears open for that. But I am a partner and a Twitter Space guy at Orbital Command, among other things. Now, my intention for this next 10 minutes or so is to give you a tutorial on how to run Twitter Spaces if you've never done it before. Why are they important though? What is the importance of Twitter Spaces and what makes them such a great content creation tool to grow an audience? I can tell you firsthand, we've been using Twitter Spaces for the last year. I've probably run close to 100, and in that time, that's helped us build up a very loyal and friendly following who follow and stay tuned to what we do at Orbital Command and of course delegate to us as well across the different chains. And hopefully, once you've learned how to use this tool yourself, you can do something similar, build a nice big audience and use that to grow a business and so on and so forth. So what we'll do, the first part of this call is we'll get straight into the meat and potatoes. We'll get straight into the core of how to do it and set it up from scratch. And then we'll go into a bit of the theory behind it all. And that'll be where all the really key information is to help you improve the spaces or really optimize them. So on this first slide here, we're going to see 2 slides, left first and right second. This is the format for the next few slides. If you are setting up a Twitter space, it's probably first worth knowing that you cannot set them up on a computer, not yet at least. So you'll need a phone, a smartphone. Once you've got your phone up, you'll see a screen that looks a bit like this on your Twitter when you load up your Twitter. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a plus sign. Click the plus sign. That's going to open up the second page here on the right. You're going to want to click the top right button that says Spaces. That's going to take you to a page that looks a little bit like this. On the left-hand side, it'll be blank. It's all pretty obvious what you do here. You're going to fill out that top line with what you're going to talk about, the topic, or if you are interviewing a project or a person of influence, like I tend to do, you're going to want to put the Twitter space name in here. So for this example, you can see I've written down insert Twitter space name here. Typically, if I was interviewing a project, for example, I am interviewing a project called Cavern Protocol tomorrow. The space name is called Cavern Protocol. Of course, if there are some extra details that I want to include about the topic of the conversation, I'll add them there as well. If you follow the second red line and the arrow on the side, it's pointing to the record space button. I strongly recommend recording your spaces. It's going to give people an opportunity to tune into the space after it has happened in real time. And of course, being that you are transmitting your frequency across the globe, not everyone is awake at the same time as you. So it gives the people who are running in different time zones a chance to hear the content of your conversation. The next thing that's going to happen, if you look further down on the left-hand side here, there is one more button. That button looks like a little clock. Click that clock. This is going to be what you use to schedule the space. Now, if you aren't planning on scheduling the space in advance, you can just simply click the Start Your Space button and that will activate the space. However, if you are like me and you are planning to have multiple spaces prepared in advance, well, this is your best friend. You're going to want to use this button. It's going to bring up what you can see on the right-hand side, which is the clock. Now, key thing here to note, and I've made this mistake in the past, so I'll make sure that you don't by relaying my mistakes, is you want to set the blue one. The blue is what it's going to be. So you can see I've highlighted pretty clearly PM there. So if I was setting this, it would say 6 PM and not AM. It's a little bit confusing to know which one's which. Now, once you've done that, the next page it's going to take you to, it's going to look a little bit like this. So you can see here, it'll say Dr. Doscoin, that's me. 19th of January at 6 p.m., which is when I scheduled that hypothetical call. The name of the space appears there. Your little avatar will be on the page as well. And if you look at the 4 buttons at the bottom of the left-hand image, you'll see there is the feather. That is the option to tweet the space out. You can add some extra details. That's where you'd put the content, a summary, hashtags. You could also put the guest's name, so you could at them. What I would say though is don't do that. Rather than do that, tweet about it and then add the at in the comment section. The reason being, Twitter has an interesting little feature where when you add the at feature or you at your guest, it moves your tweet from the general tweet section to tweets and replies, and that tends to get less exposure. So pro tip there, just use the feather, click the tweet button, and then at your guests in the comment section just to make sure that they have seen the space has been set up. Next to the feather, you've got the direct mail. So you can use that to send a private message or a DM. I will often use that to DM the guys internal actually at Orbital Command and get them to come and join certain spaces if I feel like they'd be great contributors. You can also use that for the guests themselves. Copy link will allow you to copy it and share it elsewhere. I usually take that link and set up an event in our Discord channel, the OC Discord, which you should jump into if you have not already done so. Heaps of great value there, but we have a link that's set up attached to an event within the page, within the Discord, that will alert people within our Discord that the Twitter space is live. On the right hand side, what you'll see here is if you click, once the space has been set up and you click on the plus sign button and the spaces button again, it'll bring this up. It'll say upcoming spaces. And you can see I've just got the insert Twitter space name here space at the bottom. If I had 3 or 4 spaces set up, which sometimes does happen, they'll all be listed there. And when I want to turn them on or activate them, I can simply click on them themselves. Now, when I'm loading up the space, this is the screen that it'll show. It'll give me the opportunity to invite people just before I start the space. So on the left-hand side here, you can see it says, do I want to invite people? And it's giving me the option of Breezy and KP. I can type in a quick message and say, hey, jump on in. And that's really handy, again, if you've already organized for certain people to join the call. And also, sometimes it'll suggest people who would be interested. And so I'll just press their names real quick, maybe 2 or 3 of them, just to help fill the space at the start. Sometimes Twitter spaces can be a little slow to get off the ground. Or sometimes I'll just hit the skip button and not worry about that and let Mother Nature do its thing. Once I'm in the space, what you'll see here on the right-hand side is there'll be my little avatar. It'll say host. There, it'll automatically put my microphone on mute, which is really handy. So just make sure you turn that off before you start speaking. It says above the avatar, what do you want to talk about? Only because I hadn't added anything in advance beforehand. Do as you wish. You can fill that in or you can leave it blank. But that above section is essentially what's called the banner. And you can share links to other tweets there. You can have guests share links to other tweets, which of course, once they're in the call or once you're in the call, you can simply go to another tweet, press the share button, which is this button here with the 3 little circles and the triangle, press share and it'll automatically share it in the banner section. Up here, when the space fills out, and I don't know if you can see my mouse as I run it across the screen here, but on the right hand vertical screen, usually when the space is filled, you'll see an array of different avatars there. So next to Dr. Doscoin, there would be 3 others, and then it makes its way down depending on how many guests there are. The buttons at the bottom will show you the little people. They are to display the hosts, co-hosts, speakers. So when you have speakers on, you can nominate for them to be co-hosts. You can nominate for them to be regular speakers. You can demote them from the speaking platform, which is handy. Sometimes you might get a couple of trolls that come up and start talking some rubbish. That's a handy little tool. Sometimes you might want to let them just have a talk because it can be quite entertaining. The heart is for the emoji. So if you notice when you're doing your call that people are pressing, people are displaying love hearts and thumbs ups, it's because they're pressing that button and then clicking the emojis. Now, once the space is done, you can opt to see the analytics of the space by clicking on it. It'll bring up this left-hand side. It'll say View Analytics, and then you can click the right-hand. Once it loads up, it'll look like the right-hand side. And you can see here, it'll have who tuned in, how many co-hosts there were, how many speakers there were, and the duration of the call. Of course, this was just a hypothetical quick setup call. No one tuned in, no speakers were on, and no co-hosts were on. Okay, so the key things that I want to convey here is we'll answer a couple of quick questions. What to do before the call, on the call, and after the call. And this should hopefully help you get better engagement, better responses from the guests, better flow once the conversations are going. Before the call, I say, I ask the question, why should you plan ahead of time? It's pretty obvious. Prior planning prevents poor performance. You may have heard that saying before. You want to make sure that you're well prepared for the guests, particularly in our industry or in the industry that I'm in Web3. There are lots of incredible projects that I'm speaking with very big brained intellectuals on the other end of the call. And so I want to make sure that for the time that we are having a conversation, that they feel felt, heard, understood, and that I can also simplify their messages and convey them in a concise, succinct way for the people who are listening. I tend to run spaces sort of as a podcast format. However, there are other formats too. It can be done as an AMA or an Ask Me Anything. It can be done as a roundtable discussion. So you might invite a bunch of different experts and have them all be the main speakers, and you just choose to sort of facilitate the call and jump in where needed just to steer a conversation in a certain direction or bring forward a new topic to be discussed. Or it just might be a shit talking session. And so those tend to do very well too. A lot of people on Twitter like to be entertained and will jump into spaces that are just purely trolling and hilarity. But planning ahead of time will prevent some hiccups on the call. Of course, it helps you have success because the people that you're speaking with enjoy the conversation. They're more likely to recommend you to other people to do spaces, and they're more likely to get back on other spaces with you in future. The main considerations, I think, is just figuring out what sort of call am I running. Is it a podcast? Is it an AMA? Is it a roundtable? Do plenty of research. If it is a more formal call, for my research, will typically go through a few avenues. I will look over Medium docs. I will read over white papers. I will go into the project's Discord channels and look through Discord servers and look through all of the channels and look at some of the questions that are being asked in the channel. I will go through the project's Twitter feed and look at their recent announcements, just collect some data on what they've been talking about recently, look at some of the comments and questions that are in the comments, and just sort of piece it all together so I can have a comprehensive overview, and then I'll make more specific questions for them, or I'll prepare more specific questions for them. The spaces I typically run are 60 minutes. I like to set the purpose, the agenda, and the outcome at the start of the call, which leads us to how this operates while we're on the call. At the very start, I will typically do an introduction. I'll say something to the effect of, it's Dr. Doscoin coming to you through the Orbital Command account today. Today's guest is Project X. They've recently been working on A, B, and C. The way this call is going to work is as a Q&A sort of style for the next half an hour. And then once we get to around the half an hour mark, the floor is going to open up. We'll allow some speakers to come up and ask some questions of their own. Once everything is said and done, hopefully at the end of 60 minutes time, you're feeling more educated and empowered about this project and you understand how it works. That way my job will have been done correctly. And then the conversation flows, and usually I'll do a calls to action and things like that at the end of the call. On the call itself, how to have a conversation that flows for you and the listeners is tied to having good preparation. Now, for myself, I have questions, probably 20 fallback questions that are like my general template of questions, and it might be to do with, the team itself, how many members are in the team, what's the history, what are they working on, why is it important, how does it work, how does it work at a high level, how does it work as an Eli 5 or an explain it to me like I'm 5. I might ask them questions about attracting liquidity, collaborations, partnerships, integrations. I've got sort of a general template there, but I use that to fall back on at times when the conversation might have meandered or maybe not necessarily clear. And so it just helps bring a bit more clarity back to the conversation. The main thing is just having fun, though. The listeners want to be entertained. You want to involve the community. You want to ask questions. You want to have them answer in the comments. You want to have them sharing emojis. So just prompting the people who are listening to, if you agree, drop a love heart, drop a thumbs up, drop a laughing face if you're finding it funny. I'll typically prepare the space or preface it rather at the start too, and just sort of let people know that occasionally there might be some glitches, just because Twitter, for whatever reason, can be a little bit clunky when it comes to Twitter Spaces. So I'll usually let people know in advance to just let me know in the comments or in the DMs if something's going on and my audio is cutting out or the guest's audio is cutting out. You'll also want to make sure that the guests that they have good microphones, and sometimes guests won't have done Twitter Spaces before, and they'll be trying to join from their computer, which at the moment that function doesn't exist. So you just want to make sure that you've got good communication with them in the background. I usually talk to them via Telegram, sometimes in the Twitter DMs while I'm on the call with them. It can become a little bit of a juggling act, having an array of tabs open on your browser just to remind you of certain topics and questions and exploring things in real time. It's just the style that I use when I'm doing my spaces. Again, it's not the only way to do it. Some people just turn on the space, press play, and start talking, and off they go. But again, you can have people link their tweets in the banner just by pressing the share button at the bottom. What not to do, I would say, just freak out. Don't freak out, rather. When I was first doing Twitter Spaces, I would get, I wouldn't say high level anxiety, but I'd get a low level of anxiety before a call, just thinking about all of the people that might be listening in and not wanting to sound like an idiot. And it's a very valid, I don't know if it's a valid fear actually, but it's a very common fear. And that's why public speaking is one of the most, it causes the most reservations for people on the planet. And this is essentially what it is. It's public speaking in a forum that is worldwide, and essentially anyone can cast judgment. So that used to be more of a problem for me. I used to have a little bit more apprehension around that. I'll just say, don't even worry about it, because you're not going to get it right. The fact of the matter is, I don't think I've had a single call out of 100 calls thereabouts that I haven't fumbled some words. I haven't had to ask something to be explained twice. There's always going to be something. And if it's not you performing poorly, it'll be Twitter rugging you and glitching out. So it's just the nature of the beast. It comes with the territory. I'd say don't fear it. Just get on there and do it. Courage is acting in spite of fear. So let's say you have the call, you get halfway through, you open up the floor. Sometimes you'll have some really good questions come in, and you can just let it run. I often like to, if we get some intelligent guests on asking good quality questions, I just let it run, and I just make sure that I'm keeping an eye on the time and that I'm giving adequate attention to each speaker. And If they don't come up, sometimes people are a little bit shy. You might get some radio silence, and that's natural too. There's going to be plenty of times when you're on a Twitter space and there's some weird silences. Don't read into it too much. Just it's part of the process. If there is endless silence, then that's when it comes in handy to have had all of your backup questions prepared and know what people are going to be asking about, or know what you'd rather ask the projects about. Once I get to the end of the call, sort of the last 10 minutes, I will start using language to say, like, cool, we're at the 50-minute mark now. In the next 10 minutes, here's what I want to cover and make sure is conveyed for the audience. Is there anything that we haven't yet spoken about? There's a question I like to ask to the guests, or to the guests, as they might have an agenda. They might have something that they want to share that we haven't actually spoken about. So it means that they get to get their thing off their chest, their information off their chest, and not leave the call feeling like they're still holding on to something. And then it's usually followed with call to action. So I'll then guide people to follow their Twitter, follow them on Telegram, Discord, wherever it might be. I will usually just do a quick summary of what we've spoken about. I will usually do one last sort of call to action for, if they've got to claim airdrops or whatever it might be. There'll be something spoken about in the call that I'll just sort of refer back to. And then once it's done, it's like customer care. It's like if you make a sale as a business, you want to make sure that the customer feels cared for once it's done. So I will shoot a message out to the project themselves and say, loved having a conversation with you. Here are the things in particular that I enjoyed. And just offer my services where I can in the future. If you need us, feel free to reach out. If you have any alpha, let us know. We'll get you on another Twitter space. That's a really handy thing to do when it comes to the booking process, because sometimes there isn't a great deal happening in the space, and I might reach out to a few projects and it's a little quiet in their camp, but then I'll reach out to a project I spoke to 3 months ago and I'll say, hey, just checking in. Do you have anything exciting happening? Boom. They might be like, yes, actually, perfect timing. Let's have a conversation. So that's one of the things I like to do. Usually I'll give the spaces a listen back to as well. Just make sure that it flowed all right, or just sort of observe how it flowed. I like to sort of just critique and pay attention to the little nuances and the little idiosyncrasies, the things that might have made the call a little clunky. And I can tell, I can listen back and go, oh, I was definitely tired on that call, or I was on fire on that call. And just looking at things like the audio too, I like to sort of look at the audio and make sure that I'm picking up on things. For example, when I was first doing this, I had a bigger beard and I would use my cord earphones and my beard was rubbing on the mic and I didn't actually realize that. So listening back to the audio helps you identify if there are some audio challenges. Now, the other thing you can do with the Twitter Spaces is you can have them downloaded. You can upload them to another website. If you have a website or a YouTube, that can be handy to make sure that they last forever, because Twitter actually has, I think it's maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not entirely sure, but it's not a long time that they're up for. So you can, by downloading them, it just means that you've got access to them in future. For us personally, we have all of our spaces recorded by a jet in the space named terraspaces.org. And he is, or Finn from terraspaces.org rather, is essentially creating a vault of all things Web3, especially in the Cosmos ecosystems. And so he records our spaces and puts them in his vault there. If you don't have that, then of course you can add them to your own locations. Also, we do Twitter threads, Orbital Command. We have a member of the team, Deebs. He does phenomenal threads, and he will usually be on the calls as well and be taking some notes along the way. As I said earlier, it can be a little bit hard spinning plates, juggling all the tasks, clicking through tabs, reading through questions, bringing up speakers. It can be a little bit challenging. So having someone else on the call isn't a bad idea when it comes to taking notes. And also as support if you're having technical glitches. There have been a few occasions where I've used a couple of the other guys on the Orbital Command team last minute to step in and host the space, essentially because my audio was playing up, and or I might not have been able to hear the space. So again, part and parcel, it comes with the territory when you're on Twitter Spaces. There are going to be glitches. There's no avoiding that at this point in time. Maybe Elon can fix that in future. But as we wrap this up, as we head to sort of the last 5 minutes, and I'm already 10 minutes over time, but that's okay. Just like a Twitter Space, it doesn't always go to plan. This has been put together by myself. I'm Dr. Doscoin. You can see my little icon in the right-hand corner there. Again, one of the partners and the Twitter Space guys at Orbital Command. What I would recommend from now is to go and follow us on Twitter if you're not already doing so. That's at orbital_command. You can also visit our website, www.orbitalcommand.io. Thoroughly recommend checking that out. We do have some very cool tools that are being added there in the next couple of days. So by the time you hear this, there should be some really cool tools on that page. And of course, you can delegate to us directly from that page. And I said earlier in the call, you should be on our Discord. If you aren't on our Discord, you may have even just heard a Discord notification in the background there. We have phenomenal resources in that Discord, and the link to that Discord is in our Twitter bio. So if you're not already part of it, jump in there and just have a look around. We're friendly. Ask us some questions. We'll put you in contact with people that you need to know if you need to know them. And other than that, as I said, Lunar Classic, Osmosis, and it's looking like Sane Network very soon too. Come and visit us there. Come and jump on a Twitter Space, and hopefully we'll see you on a Twitter Space soon, running your own one. If you've learned something and you enjoyed this, shoot us a DM, shoot me a DM, offer some feedback. If you didn't enjoy it, that's fine. Offer me some feedback too. I always like to hear what people have to say, and that's why I enjoy what I do. With that being said, go and be excellent.